Hey everyone, Gunita here from the 1947 Partition Archive. We are super late today. We had technical difficulties. My computer crashed. Our internet was not working. You would not expect this in California, where I'm speaking to you from, but that's what happened. But welcome anyway. And we've got Fakhra Hassan here, who's documented more oral histories than anyone else on our team ever. And she's done some absolutely incredible work in Pakistan. So this is day 11 of our series on the 75 Days of Partition, which kicked off on June 3rd, which is the day that the Mountbatten Plan was announced in 1947. And we're going on for 75 days until August 17th, when the Radcliffe Line was announced. And it's just a coincidence that it's the 75th anniversary this year. And it's also 75 days between that Mountbatten Plan announcement and the Radcliffe Line announcement. So to commemorate that on this 75th anniversary, we're doing an event every day. So welcome today to day 11 with Fakhra Hassan. And we've got Anshul on the back end, who you're not seeing here. But Fakhra is going to tell us a little bit about her journey, how she got inspired to document partition, and then a little bit about her work, and if she's up to it, a little bit about her really intriguing family history. So Fakhra, how did you get started with oral histories? What compelled you to join us in this work on oral histories?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Gunita. It's an honor to be participating in this series. My journey basically began back in 2014 when I was working on a paper on oral traditions and folklore. And incidentally, I stumbled upon the website of the archive through one of the articles. I think it was the New York Times, and it was the website that caught my attention because I had never seen cities from East Punjab listed in it. And there was a lot of discussion that used to happen in our house, especially from my father's side, because Wazirabad, a lot of people from Wazirabad migrated to East Punjab, and there were places that they used to talk about, and I had never heard of them. And I think for the first time I saw references to East Punjab being made on that website, and I saw cities in Bengal, and then and it seemed fairly authentic at the very first sight, and I decided to sign up for it and check it out. It was a very whimsical, partially calculated decision to join the archive. And when it said oral histories, and the thing that prompted me to join was actually my grandmother's stories that I had been hearing. I think I've talked about this before. She used to narrate her migration from Delhi to Karachi fairly often, and her life in Delhi fairly often, and did not uh, I did not understand what the fuss was about, but that was something that I also grew up with. And largely also, there was essential information missing in the textbooks that I was citing, sourcing for my research, for my thesis, and I could not find. I mean, I was looking for more, and I used to think that the stories that we hear in our living rooms and the discussions that we have in our living rooms, uh, how authentic are they? I mean, do they have to be in the form of a book in order to be proved authentic?
Right.
So those questions were always swimming in my head, and largely I used to think about this more when my grandmother used to tell me about her family history, that they are descendants of Bahadur Shah Zafar, and
Which is so fascinating.
yeah.
Maybe we'll get to
And
hear more of that today.
so, and the thing is, she used to constantly like scold all of us and say that you don't behave like princesses, you should be behaving like princesses, talking like them, and you should have that demeanor. And we used to have, my nanny's mother, she used to wear this garara all the time. Used to have this silver pandan, and she would spread her garara and sit on the ground, I mean, like a proper princess. And we used to just look at her in wonder and thinking, how does she do it? So those were the things that really inspired me to get on the oral histories bandwagon. And the very first interview actually that I recorded was of my grandmother. She was absolutely delighted, and that she was being recorded on camera, and all of this is going to get documented. And uh, and It was a wonderful experience. She poured her heart out, and I learned about things that, uh, because it was a formal interview, so the questions were fairly detailed. So she shared details that were not normally shared with me when she was just casually narrating the stories. And she also added that, finally, thank God, somebody has gotten the nerve to do this, because it is so important that these voices get documented properly, and
That's
given
awesome
the.
to have her support
Yeah.
like that. And what were some of
Yeah.
your learnings? I'd love to learn, for our audience to learn, if you're willing to share some of the intriguing learnings about your family that you came across for the first time during that interview.
Well, the first thing that I came to learn of was the people in her family who betrayed the Mughals, and who sided with the British, who were in cahoots with the British, in the downfall of the Mughal
Can you
Empire.
explain that a little bit more? That's so
Uh,
interesting. I'm not even sure if it's been written about.
it has been written about. William Dalrymple, actually what happened was that my nani's cousin, she she's still in India. She lives in, I think she right now, I think she used to be in Delhi. Now she's somewhere else. Uh, I've forgotten the name of the place. Uh, okay, what name was this? Anyway, she's not there anymore. But they used to live close to the Chandni Chowk, where there was a pension house reserved for the Mughals. You must have come across that pension house, and they were living off the pension. The British had actually set up a pension for the descendants of the Mughal family, sort of as an
Similar to the
apology.
Maharajas, like the
Yes,
privy
yes.
purse, as they called it.
Exactly. So basically, my nani's family's source of income was that pension, and they were all living there, including my nani's cousin. And my nani's cousin and her aunt decided to stay back in India. They did not migrate, and they have been living there. And in fact, my nani's cousin basically ended up becoming a librarian um in Delhi. She was a well respected figure. Her name was Pakiza Begum. And she, uh, um, and she's basically the person that William Dalrymple reached out to.
Wow.
So she was
So
able to narrate the same story that my nani narrated to me. The
can you tell
person's
us what that
name,
story is?
Fakhruddin. His name was Fakhruddin, and he was a relative. And in her narrative, in Pakisa Begum's narrative and my nani's narrative, they're quite similar. I mean, Nani basically, she can't read English at all, but it's amazing that she has this body of work. I would not have found out about it when I read Dalrymple's version of it. I was like, oh my god, he got to her before I did. Yeah, I just remember now. Pakiza Begum lives in Noida these days. She's in Noida these days. So, basically, what the story entails is that Fakhruddin basically was the person who misled the British in saying that the massacre that took place at the Red Fort, where British women and children were massacred, Bahadur Shah Zafar was behind it. I mean, he had something to do with it, when actually he didn't even have a clue of what was going on. Everything, the infantry, the Bengal infantry marched from Delhi, and they came, and they were the ones behind it. And Fakhruddin was the person who basically molded the story into to um, for the British to believe that it was Bahadur Shah Zafar who was actually behind it, and they should definitely do something about this. Um, so that is something that was new for me, that there was a traitor within our own family. And the second thing that was really fascinating for me was the exiled kind of
How was
life.
he? How was he related to the family? What was his relation to Bahadur Shah Zafar?
I think he was his nephew,
Okay.
or
Did he hold
but
a position in the court?
no. He was not an important. He was not. He did not have any kind of power. He was just a family member. I mean, these are the kind of people who actually do these things. You see. So I mean, that much I remember for sure, that he was not. And again, you have to see, when we are teaching the decline of the Mughal Empire also, one of the issues that we talk about is the succession disputes. because Mughal family was like at the very end, way before Bahadur Shah Zafar came into power. I mean, look at him. He was just 80 years. I mean, he was 80 years old. Wasn't even fit to be a king. I don't know how he became the king. So
Wow.
so these succession disputes were rampant. There was no policy in the administration on on where the power is going to go, who's going to become the next king. So because they had multiple wives, and their children, is it going to be the children of that wife, a child of that wife, or this wife? So these succession disputes were constantly going on ever since the death of Aurangzeb in 1757. He passed away. Yeah, 1757. That's just like 100 years before the mutiny itself. So that was all kind of like building up, and they were. It's not surprising. I was really not surprised. I mean, now I'm not surprised because it was sort of like something that was going on for nearly a century. The succession disputes, and greed had taken over, and nepotism had taken over, and people wanted power, and Fakhruddin basically saw that the British are the next big players in town, and I should do something to help them. Maybe I'll get some benefits out of it. I mean, just like the people who in Plassey, I mean, like Mir Jafar and uh, uh, I've forgotten the other guy's name, did in the Battle of Plassey. So it's not surprising, but it was kind of like uh, it was an interesting discovery.
Yeah, it's
The second
very
thing,
fascinating.
the second thing that was really captured my fascination, when my nani was narrating the story, is the kind of exiled life that they lived after the mutiny. Their life had become increasingly difficult. Everybody wanted to kill them, and she narrated the story of her father Hamid Shah. That when he was born, people were looking for him, and they wanted to murder this infant. They completely wanted to, and the British were actually hunting down these. And this is, by the way,
What was
contested.
Hamid Shah's relation to Bahadur Shah Zafar?
He was his grandson.
Okay.
He was his grandson. Hamid Shah was his grandson, and he
That was your
died.
great grandfather.
My yeah. So Hamid Shah was my mother's grandfather. So Bahadur Shah Zafar was his grandfather, and Hamid Shah's sister stayed behind in India, whose daughter I was just telling you about, Pakiza Begum, is basically his niece. So basically, Hamid Shah, his life was in danger, so they took refuge in Hyderabad, Deccan for a while, and some people there, the Nawab there was very kind, and he was the one who decided to give them asylum when he was a baby. And he grew up, for the first initial years of his life. He spent first initial years of his life over there. When the when Queen Victoria officially became the Empress of India, when the East India Company was dissolved, that's when the British decided to give some concessions to the Mughals, and as a result, that pension house was set up, and they decided to they apologized to them for whatever they did. And Bahadur Shah was in exile, and no, they didn't even bother to announce his death in India when he passed away, because in fear of that
Retaliation.
mutiny again, they were so
Right.
scared. The British were so petrified that they buried it. They didn't even bury him properly. His grave was unknown for so many years. It was found out by accident. So, so the thing is that, and after that, of course, when my great grandfather was able to move back to Delhi, and the story that my nani shared about, I mean, it's fascinating. She talked about squirrels in Delhi. I mean, it was fascinating to hear that there used to be squirrels in her. Uh, you don't get to hear of squirrels in cities anymore. They've completely gone now because of all the
And
infrastructure.
over
Yeah,
urbanization. Right.
yeah. So squirrels, and feeding the squirrels, and clean neighborhood, and again, uh, when partition happened, again, the sites that she describes are quite disturbing. And again, there were people who were unknown people who constantly used to knock at their door asking for male members of the family. We know this is Bahadur Shah Zafar's family. Where are the male members? And again, her father, Hamid Shah, was his life. They used to hide him, you know, in the basement, that so that
Wow.
nobody could find him. So so these circumstances forced him and his daughter, Afroz Jahan, who's my nani, to migrate to Karachi. So
And that
that's
was
why,
when did they migrate?
they migrate in August, I think. No, July
47.
1947. Yeah,
Okay.
1947. In
Interesting.
1947. So, and they migrated by train, I think. And her train journey was also very emotional. The train wasn't coming. They stayed at the Humayun's tomb for some time and waited. And it's a story of every refugee who migrates from one place to another. They do it either by train or by ship or by
Yeah.
foot. So hers was also like that. And so it was quite a revelation for me that this family was living in exile for such a long time. I mean, imagine being exiled in your own country. So it's sad that way. So that allowed me to keep going and dig more stories, do some more research, which is why Karachi fell into the I wanted to. My nanny's like obsessed with Karachi. I mean, she hated Lahore. She came to Lahore and she said, I don't want to live in Lahore. So she somehow Lahore, Karachi resonated with her. And she stayed there. And again, one of the things that she complained about, which also something that I found surprising, that she was not able to finish school. That's one of the regrets, that she could
Why is
not,
that?
because she was married off. I mean, this is something that, again, this is uh she was married. She came to Karachi, and I think within a year or two she was married. She was 14 or 15 when she was married. So, and she still, and yeah, she's a mother of 10 children. My mother is like one of them. And so, uh and this, again, I would say it's not an isolated story. I think lots of women got married in mass, in fact, in
Yeah.
some places. I mean, there is an interview I conducted from Hyderabad in Sindh, of this family who had converted to Islam from Hinduism, a century back. And they were very well respected amongst the Hindu community that used to live in Hyderabad.
Fascinating.
And so, in that sense, in order to protect the honor of the women, the Hindu women who were living there, so there was an en masse wedding that this family organized. I mean, like hundreds of men and women in one place getting married at the same time.
So interesting.
Yeah.
I've heard of this
So
actually before, but it's very, very interesting.
yeah. So it's a common thing, because honor was is such a powerful theme when it comes to stories of partition, women, and honor. So this is one of the things that was happening. Women were getting married very quickly. They
Yeah.
were being married off very quickly. And this is one of the things, regrets, that she shared, that she wanted to go to school and she wanted to, but it could not happen.
So Fakhra,
uh,
I want to transition now into your journey, oral history documentation journey in the rest of Pakistan. And I know you have a slide deck for us. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of, how you got around, how you traveled, how you found people? Because I know you went to some unusual places and it was so brave. Sometimes you were taken.
that was very rare, actually. That was very, very rare. I really would like to mention here the 1947 Partition Archive. Anybody who's thinking about joining them, I would say go ahead and do it ASAP, because I think most of the stories, that I think 50% of the stories that I have recorded have come from referrals through your website. And it is amazing. Every time a referral would come in, I would just look at the area and say, okay, decide this is the one I want to do, and I would go ahead and do it. And cases of going to these places like Sawat, and this was sort of purely out of personal interest. I wanted to see the place, I wanted to check out the landscape, and of course, like, meet people. And seriously, it has been, I have not been aggressive about it. It's just been quite naturally, because you see, Gunita, it's the event of partition. It in itself, the word, when you mention it, it is so emotional for so many people. They instantly want to talk about it. You really don't want to have to make an effort. So it was really not difficult finding people to sit down for an interview. It was really not hard at all. I mean, to give you an example from Lahore, there was a gentleman walking on the road with a stick. He was very, very old. And I just thought that let's talk to him. I asked him, well, would you, I'm looking for somebody who can talk about partition. And he says, oh, okay, I can talk about partition. And immediately he said, I'm from Hoshiarpur. And I just stood there and I was like amazed that, this person on the road, he doesn't know me and he's instantly ready to talk about partition. And he took me to
Yeah.
the nearby mosque, which is so funny because I was wearing my jeans and shirt. He thought I was a guy. And he took me to the mosque and we sat down in the mosque and we started talking. And the boys, came and they surrounded us. And, he was kind of like baffled, like, why are the people? And when he had started narrating his story, he looked at me and he said, excuse me, are you a girl? And and then I said, well, yes, I am. And he said, I'm so terribly sorry about this inconvenience. Could you please come to my house and we can continue over there? So
That's amazing. And, I love the fact that you did not disrupt the train of thought. You just went along with
no,
him and you were like, I'll just wait
he
till
was so
somebody
excited.
gets in here.
Exactly, I waited
You're
for him to
amazing.
find out himself. So it was an amazing and it the story. And it turned out that it was not just him, his wife, his sister-in-law. There were so many people in his family with dying to tell stories of their migration from East Punjab. They were dying to tell stories, and I sat down with them. Uh, and he was in tears, literally, that I have not done this before. And thank you so much for, because as we say in Urdu, like, mere kandhe pe se boj halka ho gaya, to talk about this talk about, like, my journey and my friends and the life I used to have, which I still miss. So and when you talk about learnings, one of the things I was interested in knowing, that we talk about overpopulation, we talk about different kinds of diseases, and how the world is changing because of climate change and global warming. And these are like overarching phenomena, and they look very, it's very sexy to teach these things in the classroom with, like, graphs and figures, but you really want to know the humanity behind on
Yeah.
what is causing these
What does it
things.
mean? Yeah.
Yes, exactly, what does it mean? So the working with the archive and through these oral histories, I was able to dig up a lot of answers behind that peak between 1947 and 1951, particularly in Karachi.
That's
Uh,
so interesting.
so such a
Can you tell us
huge
a little bit
peak.
more about that?
Um, um, Basically, the peak, well, specifically, from the point of view of Karachi. So this peak in population, obviously, specifically in the case of Karachi, when the Mountbatten Plan was announced, migrations to Karachi had already started.
Yeah.
And the thing is that those migrations were not forced migrations. Those were like migrations by choice. People were looking for better economic opportunities and a better life. And, it was basically people migrating mostly from rural. And I was kind of so surprised to find out when I used to go to Karachi for interviews, every other person I was interviewing was from Punjab.
Interesting.
So I was like hoping to find people might have that very, like, out of 10 only one or two would be people who had migrated from Dhaka or from Chittagong, which would make sense because 1971 after 1971 most of the migrants in Karachi came from the Bengal side, right? But for 47 you think that, okay, maybe from UP or maybe from the
UP
Delhi
and
side,
Bihar, right?
UP and Bihar and Bhopal and Hyderabad, Deccan. It makes a lot of sense, people migrating from those areas. But there were a lot of Punjabis, like 70%, 80% of the people that I met in Karachi had migrated from Punjab.
That's
So
really interesting.
yeah, it is. And the what interested me, what was more even what was the driving force behind understanding the phenomena of overpopulation was these stories, basically. Now, to give you an example, I mean, if you want to show the deck, you can, I just wanted to give, like, 5 prominent voices. One of the things that, again, I wanted to talk about was the first lady on the slide is one of my interviewees. I was kind of amazed and surprised as well as shocked to learn that Jinnah's grave was exposed when he passed away, and there was absolutely nothing around it, and there was a colony around his grave with tents and houses, these these kacha houses, and all the refugees used to stay there, and it was in fact called the Qaidabad colony. And one of the interviewees narrated her childhood memories that we used to play hide and seek over there. I mean, just imagine the emotion that I don't know. I mean, at that point, I felt, it quite shocked that wow, the person who founded the country, people, children were playing hide and seek around his grave.
Right.
And then she talked about the living conditions of that refugee. It was really not a well developed area. It was just like shady
Wow.
housings. The Parsis were helping out the incoming refugees. Parsis had a very big role to play in accommodating refugees in Karachi. So that's one class of people. Then uh, you normally also, what another learning for me was that people keep saying that the migration to Karachi was quite peaceful. It was a peaceful migration. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. Sindhis are so friendly, but that was not the case in some instances. For example, one of my interviews, who comes from a very privileged family, in fact, her ancestor was a very prominent member of Queen Victoria's, what do you call it? Queen Victoria's court, and she comes to Karachi, and the mob attacks her. The
Mm.
mob attacks her family. You don't get to hear instances of mobs attacking people in Karachi, but in this particular case, the
I've heard
mobs
a
were.
few. I've definitely heard a few.
But this was uh, mobs attacking people. Okay, the people who had migrated, the Urdu speaking community attacking the Urdu speaking community. That was what was a little,
That is
off.
surprising. Yeah.
Yeah, so she was basically attacked. I mean, she came from an Urdu speaking background, and the mob that attacked them was also a Muslim mob.
Mm.
And it was a Muslim mob that attacked them. And she says that her mother sort of, symbolically, I would say, she took her rolling pin out and she started running after them and saying, chanting in Urdu, and, saying in Urdu that you guys are no different than the people that we left behind in India. You're doing the same thing that they were doing. So I found that to be quite, interesting in terms of understanding the mob psychology, that nobody was safe from it. And thirdly, um, recalling the interview of the late Asif Farooqi's mother, Professor Asif Farooqi. I
Right.
interviewed his mother.
He
So,
was at Habib
yeah,
University.
yes, the professor from Habib
Yeah,
University. She
slides.
basically.
I think you had some slides. Did you want to show those as well?
It's okay. I mean, I've already talked about the
Okay.
first couple of
Okay.
them. It's okay. I can
Go
talk
without
about.
the slides.
Yeah. So Taj Begum basically talks about her experience of getting an evacuee property in Karachi. You see, when we're talking about overpopulation, we also have to think about the different dynamics that were in play. They were not everyone was not entitled to getting evacuee property so easily. Which is why people like Kamar Jahan Begum, who was playing hide and seek near Jinnah's tomb, most of them ended up over there. And in the case of Taj Begum, somebody was, they were able to get an evacuee property. But her story is quite emotional in the sense that the way she described the urgency of the place that she was standing in. And I remember, I think one of our other interviews also shared this narrative, that there was a stale roti on the table with a glass of water. Somebody was just drinking it, and had left it just there and then. And the whole house seemed like it had been vacated in a hurry. And she narrates that emotionally. She says, okay, we felt so disturbed by this that uh, we did refuse to take that house. We totally refused to take that house, because we had also left in similar circumstances. We wouldn't want anybody taking our house in such a condition. So so uh, that is something that is really, that is the humanity behind it. And you get to know about, you see, partition entails the largest mass migration in human history, and you really want to understand who these people were, who
Yeah.
these human beings were, and you just find these amazing, fascinating examples of endurance, of empathy, of care and dignity also. So
And,
this was like one of the
oh, and what was some of the
examples.
work you did outside of Karachi? I want to touch on that. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's okay. Outside of Karachi, I did a lot of stories in Lahore, and one of the most in the in old Lahore, in new Lahore, there are two Lahores actually. As you know that there is the old Lahore where all the gates are, all the 12 gates are. There was a certain level of stories in that area. Uh, Very easy to find people to talk to. Very easy to find people eager to, willing to. But the only problem was that every time I would talk about partition with them, they immediately would assume that I'm from India, because it um, because partition, I don't know, the word itself said, okay, you're talking about the Batwara, so if you're talking about the Batwara, then you definitely must be from India. And at one point I sort of gave in. At one point I said, yes, I am from India. And it was a lot of fun for making a fool out of people. And somebody came to me and said that I want to go to this Shia procession in Delhi. Do you know where that mosque is? And I simply opened Google Maps and typed it out and found the address and gave it to him, and he was so grateful. So uh, so charm of having social media and technology in your hands, you can be anyone you want. So, but the thing is that really allowed me to access people who were from Gurdaspur, people who were from Patiala, people who were from Firozpur, uh, all these places in East Punjab. I really want, because that part of India, other than the songs that I hear from these Diljit Dosanjh and AP Dillon and Musewala, of course. I have no knowledge of. I don't think there is any book written about it which gives you a fairly detailed humanistic perspective of what these places are. What
Yeah.
it's like to be a part of Punjab, Amritsar. So I outside of Karachi, I mean, my impetus to work on stories from Punjab was to find out, to dig deep into what East Punjab is like. And so I learned about the Sikh culture a lot through stories from East Punjab. I mean, because it was the communities that people used to live in, they were kind of integrated, and people used to live together in so many practices, cultural practices that uh, I came to know about from these stories.
Like what? What are some of these cultural practices?
Janam Sakhi, the not Janam Sakhi, sorry, it's the culture of, okay, I don't know the name of it. It's basically naming a person after they're born.
Okay.
uh, and and the thing is, some of the Muslim families who have migrated here were also following that practice.
So
And so they used to take help from these I don't know what to call, there is a specific name for them, people who basically it's a profession. The way they told me that it's a profession they used to have, and they used to invite them to their house, or according to their date of births and the stars and constellations, which one
yeah,
is coinciding with which one, and these are
astrologer.
the names. Yeah, the
Like pundits
astrologers.
were doing that.
Yes, the
Yeah.
pundits, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So
And this is
so
happening in
they
Pakistan too.
yes, this was happening in pre-partition Pakistan. I mean,
Pre-partition, right?
yeah, this is people who have migrated from those places. And they also talked about the professional barbers, uh, who were right now our concept of a barber is somebody who sits in a salon and cuts hair. But the barbers of that time, the people from Punjab who narrated stories of those barbers were quite qualified. They were assigned to do a lot of stuff, help in childbirth and cook food for the entire community. And they were tasked with a lot of responsibilities. And again, they also mentioned that they were also tasked with naming of the children as well. So completely out of my league, because I'm really not familiar with this, but these were learnings for me uh, um, from this part of Punjab. And what can I say? There is so much. There is so
And
much
so
more.
we're
And
we're, we're oh yeah, go ahead. We're pretty much out of time, but I wanted
yeah,
to maybe hone in on a couple more key points that you really wanted to share that you felt that should be more widely known. You also did work in the Northwest Frontier area. You did work in rural Sindh. So any
oh
of those
yes,
areas that you want to focus?
Sindh was absolutely amazing. Sindh was absolutely remote. Remote areas of Sindh was an absolutely amazing experience. It was like one of the most difficult places to conduct interviews in because of the language barrier.
Okay.
So I used to have a translator with me who would help me to decipher what they were saying. So it's not as fun as conducting interviews in the language that you actually understand. But other than that, the sites there, I managed to see the temples and the shrines over there, and was very happy to see that they were completely intact and very well kept. And
Pretty neat.
and so one of the things that I really loved about interviewing this one lady in Sakhar, she comes from a Hindu family, and there was this game that she introduced me to. I mean, it involves seashells and a board. It's very similar to the board, looks like Ludo, but it's not Ludo. I don't know what's it called again. It's a game. They speak the Marwari language, and Marwari is again something very important for everybody uh, to know if they're interested in the history of Sindh. It's an oral tradition. This is actually a language spoken by both the Muslims and the Hindus of Sindh and of Sakkar, and it has no written script. It's an oral, It's and in
Dialect.
fact, yeah, in fact, Akbar. Now I'm remembering things. Now, Akbar, my great Bahadur Shah Zafar's great grandfather, used to have Marbaris. The Marbaris basically are were considered excellent at trade and commerce.
Right. Right.
And they were basically, Akbar used to, they were very widely popular in Akbar's court, and Akbar used to send them to Bengal to do business for him.
East
So,
India Company?
huh?
I said with the East India Company because
No, not the. I'm talking about Akbar here. I
yeah,
mean,
this
it
is
didn't
much
even
before
exist.
the East India
This is the
Company.
15th. This is the 16th century we're
Right,
talking
right,
about. In the 16th century, so Marwaris, and it was amazing to find out that Marwari is still there and people are still speaking it.
yeah.
And I think from some of my interviews you'll be able to find some greeting phrases. I asked them to say some greeting phrases in Marwari, or say some sentences in Marwari. And so
If I'm
so
correct, we do have a Marwari community in Rajasthan and Gujarat today in India as well.
I yeah, yeah. I remember interacting with the team here, and when I shared my experience, I was so excited. And then they told me, okay, Rajasthan also has a very active. Actually, one of your scholars was also a Marwari
Yeah.
speaking gentleman. So I did not know that. But so learning languages which don't have a written script was again fascinating. It was amazing experience. And uh, as far as the princely states are concerned, Swat, I went to Swat and I met somebody there from the Sikh, met lots of people actually from the Sikh community. It has a very fairly integrated, and I mean, it felt so good to be there. The Sikhs and the Muslims, and they were like, I was in the market, I was in the bazaar. You just couldn't tell. It's like everybody was so mixed. Everybody was minding their own business. There
This
was
is in Swat,
absolute. This is in Swat.
Northwest Frontier area.
Yes, yes.
That's
This is in
cool.
Swat, as well as in Peshawar. Some parts of Peshawar also. It's
Yeah.
like, and the thing is that at some point, out of respect, uh, I said, oh, tried to. I said, okay, let's share a greeting phrase. I said Sat Sri Akal, and in return they would say Assalamu alaikum. So there was this really cool, and they were so cool. I mean, there was absolutely, you know, uh, it did not feel like the Pakistan that we have come to know. It was, a very different Pakistan.
Very cosmopolitan, a little bit more cosmopolitan.
Exactly. So I met somebody there who had a very interesting story to share about partition, and had all praises for the Nawab of Sawat, and the Nawab of the Nawab of Sawat, families who were separated during partition, and how the Nawabs of that area made sure that there was no violence, and they are allowed to migrate in peace. And not only just that, he was also made arrangements for people who wanted to stay, because obviously who wants to leave their homeland? Nobody wants to leave their homeland, right? So they were all praises for the Nawabs of um, Sawat for facilitating. I think his name was, again, I've forgotten his name. Sorry. He was very,
Either.
yeah, yeah. And see, these are just the overarching on top of this is just taking because there is so much. In 15 minutes, in 10 minutes is not enough. It's like even days is not enough. It
Yeah, we'll have to do like a 2-day marathon just on your story live to discuss them. But right now, this is just a glimpse for everybody.
This is just a glimpse of the stuff that I have done with the archive, and you guys had a very large part to play in it. And of course, one of the things, as a conclusion,
you're part of us. So when you say you guys, you mean you also.
Yes. So one of the most memorable experiences for me was going to these universities when we organized Voices of Partition events in Pakistan. I never thought that would happen. So that was quite a memorable experience, particularly the one that we did at LUMS, the one that we did at Habib University and in Gujarat University, and engaging with students, talking to students, and talking about oral histories, sort of constantly like arguing and having these arguments about the authenticity of oral history. And this is where I want to basically conclude that times have changed now, and I think you guys we have played a very important role in making sure these oral histories are documented authentically and preserved properly for posterity, and it is available to students, to scholars, to source and cite from and learn from and write books from and whatever. So so I'm really happy that and by the way, when I started, I think we had collected just close to 2,000 stories. I think that's probably another one of the reasons that I really wanted
over 10,000 now. Thanks to all of us.
Yeah, thanks to all of us.
Thanks to
It's
Karen,
amazing.
Near me, archiving these stories. Thanks to Anshul behind the scenes, who's documenting.
Yes, absolutely. She's recorded 150 stories. So I was asking her, how many has she? Yeah, so it's amazing. You've recorded close to 200. So
not close to 200, more like 120-ish.
Okay.
I don't have time anymore. I'm too busy trying to help the archive, help everybody else document stories.
Yeah, it's like when I also think of it, but the good thing is that these stories keep coming up. In terms of references, in terms of citing examples, I mean, it has sort of broadened my understanding of what our history is actually. It has simply, in very simple layman terms, all I can say is it has broadened my understanding. I'm a more mature and grounded person, and as far as South Asian history is concerned, I'm skeptical of stuff, and I think that oral histories have an extremely they're an extremely important asset as far as history is concerned, and one definitely must take this ride and see for themselves. That's all I would say. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Fakhra, for coming today. For everybody else that's watching, this is 75 Days of Partition. We're doing this every day except Sundays from June 3rd through August 17th. Please join us daily at 8 p.m. Pakistan time, 8:30 India, 9 p.m. Dhaka, and of course 8 a.m. California. But like today, sometimes we have tough technical problems and there are delays, but just stay tuned. We will come on no matter what. I know on for Saturday's episode, Facebook had some problems with our live stream, so we did upload that episode, which aired live on YouTube, later on Facebook. If you are watching this on YouTube, definitely do the thing that everybody else asks you to do, the subscribe thing, like our video, and same on Facebook. That helps more people discover it. And again, thank you so much, everyone, and we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thanks so much, Fakhra, for coming on board today.
Yeah, sure.
Bye.
Sure. Okay, bye-bye.